Now we're in a mix of hemlock and laurel and likely oak, maple, and birch forest in northern Connecticut. I'm almost there, about 3 minutes from a parking area. But look at it, so beautiful! Oh my god! Alright, private property, so this is the way to go, this unplowed road right here. Wyndham Land Trust. We're about at probably 4 inches, maybe 5, up to 6 inches of snow. White pines and hemlocks and oaks, absolutely gorgeous. It's we're here at the preserve. We're putting on these Arcadia Drips 828s for the first time, so we're gonna test them out. Alrighty, so I got these sticks. I got my shoes on. They're alright. Don't back up with them, because this thing, your heel kind of lifts up. So maybe that's just, I gotta learn. You just gotta shuffle about, but you know they work. Maybe they're a lot of work, maybe they're not. Maybe we'll find out how much I like them. I got my leather jacket, my new jacket, and my broken winter jacket on. I think I should be warm enough. Beanie for so they can see me. But I think I should be warm, maybe too warm. If that's the case, I'll just take one off and then just kind of wear it on my back, like over the, tie it around my pack right here, which you can't really see. But anyways, we're going to hike in the beautiful winter weather. I'm excited. I haven't done a winter hike, or not like a snow hike in years. It's been years. Alright, so we're going to go. And I guarantee I'll probably lose at least one of these by the end of the day, because my forgetful ass will just leave them on the ground. And don't mind my trash. These are all fucking balloons I've picked up from the past few hikes. First observation is these sticks. You know, I tightened it, but you press down, it just shrinks down. So, I mean, this one's not doing it as much. But I've fixed this several times, so I probably just need to get the little Allen key in here. Maybe I gotta twist it. Twist it manually. You know, I shouldn't have to twist it manually. Maybe that's just the way it is. So we're going to twist it a little bit, and we're going to see if it works. Twist a little bit, let's see if it works. Nope, it didn't. So these things are going to stay here, and I do not need them. So right now I am on the border of a young pine forest, a pine heath forest, or a pine mazeland in northern Connecticut. And there's a hemlock mixed in. It's much older on this side, with much bigger white pines. It's the size of one individual right there. Probably right around, it's like 60 to 100 years old. It's a good sized one. Probably around 70 or 80 feet. We got various heath. This is all hemlock. Man, I'd love to come here in the summer. It's probably dry and somewhat sandy. Yeah, I'm coming back here in the summer. Right here is a small section of upland bluestem meadow. You can just see the grasses mixed in. Well, that's awesome. Upland bluestem meadow up here. These are usually loaded with really cool native plants. We have these thick little pine lands, super shady. In general, I find these areas tend to harbor less invasives than other types of habitats. Like if you get a rich farmland or a rich clear cut, it's more than likely going to turn into invasives. Just due to areas that are more rich, they tend to be more heavily populated because they're just more, it's more or less productive land. Whereas this is drier and sandy and won't produce your cash crops like corn. So it used to be all pasture land. So pasture land that used to be kind of sandy just kind of went right back towards natives, because a lot of the invasives, they don't really thrive in this, except for there is some that are up and coming, like mugwort does well in this kind of habitat. But in my experience walking around, I have not seen a hell of a lot of that sort of invasive stuff in habitats like these. Like occasionally I'll see autumn olive. I rarely see barberry up here. I rarely see burning bush up here. And autumn olive isn't even that dense. I found a few areas with bush honeysuckle, but they weren't terrible either. Like there was just a couple here and there. So these are very resilient ecosystems that can take a beating from disruption and still remain more or less intact. Whereas the rich ecosystems are relatively fragile because all the invasives, they absolutely love rich conditions, and they outcompete the shit out of native plants. Sorry, going uphill, walking in these shoes. Whew. Going pretty fast. Man, it's a beautiful area. Look at this. An older pine, oak, and hemlock land. Damn. There's a beautiful hemlock specimen here, about 30 or 40 feet tall, and coming up in the stand, which is mostly pines. Man, that's gorgeous. Up here, I'm right around 600 feet, tripping on my feet, because I have never worn snowshoes before. But northern Connecticut, storm, as I've said before in this video, it's starting to get, I don't know, slightly more stormy. Just slightly, a little bit more wind in uplands, around 500 to 600 feet. So when it blows, you get all the snow that's stuck to the trees coming down. Probably around half an inch to an inch an hour. It's my guess. So this might not look like much, but these are the shade form of Betula lenta, or black birch. And so these can get to be, you know, pretty big trees. But these are shade-grown individuals. And this understory seems to be made up of these shade-grown individuals, or there's patches of them. I just kind of know the growth habit, and I know that's a birch. You just kind of, you see the buds from far away, and you're like, yep, without a doubt, either yellow or black birch. The leaves are slightly different, so is the bark, but when they're young like this, they're kind of hard to tell apart, but they're very common. And the other thing is, you see the smaller ones with a slightly different form? That would be a low bush blueberry. And we'll look at one, a little patch right here. You can see form is a little bit different. They have much smaller buds. And so this would be a black huckleberry. Usually blueberries or any sort of blueberry usually has a more brown stem. Black huckleberry stem is more black. So compared to any other herbaceous, not herbaceous, but small shrub that's an ericaceae, you can tell just by its features of the bark. You know, it's more black, it's not brown, doesn't have any big green buds, and pretty much, I think the really only thing is the color. It's a completely different color from low bush blueberry, which is like this light brown to red to green. They come in all those forms. So black huckleberry always comes in brown. Here's an adult black birch, probably 80 years old. This is the papa or the mama of all the ones around here. You can tell it's black birch because when they're older, they get this kind of peely plate look to them, and they have like this kind of darker, shimmery bark. Whereas yellow birch, pretty much the only birch you find commonly around here, which likely is going to be growing in a valley I eventually get to, has kind of like small peely yellow bark. So black birch, if it looks like a black birch, it's a black birch because that's the only other birch that grows around here in the shade. You won't really find gray or white birch growing in the shade. Those are all kind of sun species. They're colonizers, except for black birch. Black birch is a colonizer of understories and open stories. It's a dominant plant. I love it. These are all, you got your black huckleberry again, and you got your birch. And there's your oak, a white oak, because it kind of got that peely bark. White oaks always have this kind of peely, lighter colored bark. And it's not a red oak, because red oaks more have striations, and this one's just kind of mottled. Like a red oak right there. Boom. You can see the striations. It has obvious long, laterally vertical lines, you know, whereas this, you know, it got a little bit of lines, but it's kind of broken up. It's staggered, it's cobbled. Whereas that one, you look at it, boom, lines. You can see there's obvious parallel, or not, I guess parallelly vertical lines on it. That's how you can tell it's an oak, not a white oak. This is how you tell pines from the bark. You just look up and see that it's a pine tree. But really, if you really don't know, it's a lighter kind of brownish gray with vertical lines in it. And the vertical lines are almost platy. And also just kind of look up. If it looks like this, it's probably a white pine. Red pine would have more red bark. Pitch pine has like this very blotty, platy bark, which will likely find someone to get towards the peak. And those are really the only pines you find in this region. You'll get a few others that are quite rare, but the rare ones are extremely distinct. So, like, you just look up, you're like, oh, it's an evergreen, it's a white pine. More or less, especially in the habitat you're in. Like, I rarely see some telltale signs that you got a white oak on your hand. So here, you see this kind of the blockiness of the growth, all right? And then you realize that it's growing in the shade. Red oaks don't do that. Scarlet oaks don't do that. You just do process of elimination. And as I've gone along, I've noticed that shady ones always grow these kind of shady little branches from them. And then you got the kind of flaky, almost like white to reddish tinged bark, like compared to this red oak here, which is quite dark compared to this white oak. And, you know, striated lines, like I said before, and mottled and patchy. So this is a younger, you know. Those ones over there, they're probably 50 years older than this one. A forest that was cut probably 50 to 60 to 70 years ago, because that's about the age of these small trees. Whereas other forests, where there isn't as many saplings, those are much older. Those are probably at least 50 to 100 years older than what these are, because these are all open grown, relatively open grown shade birches. So that means this area had a significant disturbance at least twice within the past, 70 or 80 years. Probably it was logged in probably the 50s or the 40s, and then it's since been let to regrow. But before the 50s and 40s, it was logged probably only when it was, probably in the early 1900s. So it had like a 50-year interval of being cut. That's my only guess. And they cut half every 50 years. We have a stumpy American chestnut. You can tell because of its marcescence and the shape of its leaves. Beech trees are usually much kind of wider. They are more spiky, and this one isn't too spiky. It's also, in the winter, beech leaves tend to be brightly colored, whereas this one's kind of dull and drab. You can also tell because of the buds. In American beeches, buds are very pointy, and this one, you can see that they're rounded and nice. This is, without a doubt, an American chestnut. Stump grown. There's another one here, and these were the trees that were wiped out from our East Coast forest. And I think they might make a comeback. I think some of them are adapting to the fungi. That's my hunch, though. It could not be true, but perhaps it is. I've seen a couple that are big enough to fruit and just seem to be getting by with this stressor here. I love American chestnut. I hope to see the day when they return to our forests. Oak, pine, birchlands. Weighed down with all the snow. An additional 2 inches has fallen. And these snowshoes are kicking ass. Oh, look at the white pines drooping. Absolutely gorgeous. Oh, that's so beautiful. It's a fucking Charlie Brown tree. Look at that. That's gorgeous. Check out that overstory. So this is a woodland road, and the slight clearing it's made around these trees, and the fact that they haven't cut many away, leaves just like it's a tunnel of black birches through this open, kind of older forest. Look at that. This area is older than others down trail. Probably hasn't been logged for a long time. Because the black birches here are like 3 to 4 times the size as the ones in the younger areas. So it's further along. It's been longer since it's cut. This is basically how the forest used to look before it had a cut in like the 40s, 50s, or 60s. This one's probably was cut back in the 30s, 20s, or early 1900s. It's my guess, at least. Patchily aged woodland. We're coming up on a clear cut that was probably done at most 10 years ago. And this area is probably only like a 30 or 40-year-old forest. And it just transitions to 10. So, while it's not all old growth and it's not all untouched, these habitats are actually highly beneficial to birds. We got juncos hopping around. You see them over there. Junco, look at him. There's chickadees too. It's like they're following me. They're saying, "What's up?" We got the rubus. So this is a thorn shrub, or thorn scrub. It's basically New England thorn scrub, with all the rubus and the bracken. And it's native. I'm pretty sure this is the native rubus. Or it could be the invasive Himalayan rubus. But, yeah, I don't really know. I haven't put much thought into the differing species of rubus because there's a lot of them. It's one of my goals this year to differentiate more and learn how to differentiate between them. All these different rubuses. There's like 10 or 15 different ones, and over half of them are really rare. So I kind of know those, but the common ones, the Allegheny blackberry and the Himalayan blackberry, I have yet to see one or the other, or I'm just seeing one of the other. So I don't know. With time, I will tell. I take pictures, I put it on iNaturalist. If someone eventually guesses it, I'll be like, okay, now I know what that is, and I'll fix all my things. It's just a process. A beautiful Comptia peregrina, or sweet fern. This only grows in open conditions, so while logging in general isn't great for, keeping a forest, it's great for open species. And as long as you maintain on invasives, it's fine. Once that kind of crosses the line, then you're just fucking everything up. Ah, look at this. We got a beautiful gray birch. Let me look up the species name on that. Populifolia. Because I guess the leaves look like poplars. There's your catkins on there. The male reproductive part, and then the female is like the little flower that pops open. It's wind pollinated, so this produces a bunch of spore and sends it into the air, and then catches on to the female parts of the flower and fertilizes it through the wind, so they can cross. Look, we got another American chestnut right there, and then the gray birch. There's also tons of black birch. You can tell the difference between the two, because black birch tend to have much larger, more green buds at this time of year. And it's also like the gray birch tends to be more reddish brown in the twigs, whereas black birch is more brown to almost greenish yellow. And then the buds are really different too. Those buds are more just kind of like brown to black, whereas these ones, you got that green, you got the crimson, you got the brown, a little bit of red in there. So they're easy to tell apart, You just gotta look closely. And just the form, like look at the bark compared to the two. Super gray, super black. Black birch, gray birch. And then there's another one, white birch, which is also just as obvious. Ooh, I think those are hazelnuts. Witch hazel, Hamelinus virginiana. Beautiful, growing up in the open conditions up here, which is odd. It's that one with the nutlets. They're not even nutlets. They're like capsules. We're right next to a ravine and a clear cut, which is just super cool. And I believe we got some kind of pear here, a crab apple, or some other. I'm gonna try to ID it. I have a Acer rubrum, or red maple. I couldn't ID this tree. I don't think it's a maple, because this is definitely a maple, and that is not. I think that's some kind of Bradford pear or other invasive tree. It could even be a poplar. So until I do some research, I won't be able to tell for now. If those leaves, if I could see the leaves, I could tell what it was. But anyways, right here we have a red maple, Acer rubrum, and these tend to have more of a, I don't know, it's like a gray bluish green, like very light gray blue, in between each ridge, and in between is like these kind of darker red. And then on the sticks, they're almost light pink, like extremely light, like gray pink. And then they go up into these kind of dark red buds. Absolutely beautiful. I love red maples. This one has a little nest in it. If it focused. Boom. Tinctoria, a yellow flowered, herbaceous shrub in the pea family. A little beautiful baptisia. I love these. I think they're biannual. And each of these capsules contains 1 to 3 seeds. Little beans. And I love them. They're one of my favorites. And a great food source for butterflies. And I think they're quite beautiful as well. I'd love to get them more into the gardens. Oh, I love them. That beautiful Aronia melanocarpa, or the black chokeberry. I like black Aronia. That just sounds way better. Aronia melanocarpa. That's so, God. Black Aronia. Or, I don't know. Aronia, that is black. Boom. Black Aronia. That should be its common name, instead of chokeberry. It's not satisfying. You're like, oh, chokeberry. I don't want a chokeberry in my lawn. You say it's Aronia, a black Aronia. It's so much more satisfying. So when I sell these shrubs to customers, I'm like, ooh, would you love a beautiful black Aronia? And I show them, and they're like, whoa. Aronia just sounds so much cooler than chokeberry. And you're just like, ugh, you're repulsed by chokeberry. It's just, you know what I mean. Beautiful. Has white flowers in early spring, glossy green leaves, vibrant red fucking fall foliage. I mean, it's such a gorgeous plant, and they do sell it. And I've been planting them, at pretty much all my properties. Gotta love them. Lespedeza hirta, or a slender or a round-headed bush clover. It's one of those two. It's a Lespedeza hirta. I get the two common names mixed up, but Lespedeza hirta. That is what this one is called. It's a pea, and it produces these big dangly flowers that stick to animals and whatnot. And it has cute little kind of pinkish white flowers, like little tiny ones, like little clover flowers and all these little bunches. Blooms in June. It would make a decent landscape plant, I think. It's interesting. I'm sure it could be bred to have larger flowers. If, like, the daylily was able to do that, you could probably do that with these. In this forest is a kind of dense population of these American chestnuts. Multi-stemmed, dying from the blight over and over, but still able to kind of eke out a living. So they reach about shrub size, like 3 inches at most, and then the blight kills them, and then they have another stump sprout growing. So they're going to be shrubs in the future. It's pretty interesting. And this is like one of like 6 I just passed. I'm sure if I keep going down, yep, there's another one right there. This one's a little taller. We have black birches too, and white pines. That's these evergreens hanging down. Nope, here's another chestnut, multi-stemmed. But some of the stems are alive, maybe a quarter of them. And then it dies back, and then it grows another stem. And then the cycle repeats. Here we have a little, what the heck is this? Looks like a dead white pine. Yeah. Okay, it's barely alive. But these are the white pines. We have red oaks here, northern reds, ericaceous understory. Very young forest right here. Harvested 30 or so years ago. This is nice. All this heath. Ericaceous plants. Love white pines. This is what you would call an oak pine land. Oak is the dominant tree. That's about 70 or 80 years old. Maybe up to 100. And then these pines, probably around 50. Or 30 to 50 years old, and they're reaching for the canopy. These are shade grown. And so they reach the canopy, and eventually these oaks will senesce because the pines will gradually get taller and taller than them. And then behind them, you'll have a variety of ericaceous shrubs that are going to be pretty tall. And then, more than likely, mountain laurel or hemlock will move in as this understory gets moister and richer. We're in a wet pine, birch, laurel, oak. It's like a mixed pine forest. It's like your typical mixed forest of southern New England, but throw pine in there and throw hemlock in there. So it's like a pine mix. Ooh, look at this. Is this a striped maple? No. I think it's some kind of rhododendron. Probably a big pinkster. Rhododendron paramycycloides or something like that. Let me check this. It's Periclymenoides. Rhododendron periclymenoides. That is a mouthful. Pinkster. Pinkster azalea. Rhododendron pinkster. I don't know. It's the pinkster azalea. It's sort of pink. It's rhododendron periclymi... That complicated word, you know? I said it once, so you guys got it. Right by this little wet, ruddy area in this pine mixed forest. We have Clethra alnifolia, or sweet pepper bush. So that might mean that this rhododendron here is actually the swamp rhododendron. Rhododendron viscosum. So it's hard to tell without the flowers, but the leaves are slightly different on the two, and they also, I believe they actively hybridize and produce fertile offspring. So they're kind of like a blend of the two. I almost think that Periclymenoides might even just be how this looks in the uplands. I do not know. I'll have to grow them. One of these days I want to make a nursery, just collecting these from the wild, the seeds at least, and then just growing them and seeing what I get. And just growing them, you know? These are great plants. Especially saving like little ecotypes or just providing these little ecotype ones from this area. I mean, you'd be the only person to own it if you bought it. You know, otherwise it's just in the woods. Like you could have this in your city. Maybe not in the city, it's a little bit too polluted. These need kind of nice, unpolluted conditions. Kind of the same thing with mountain laurel. They need dry conditions. Another plant in the genus Rubus, or the raspberries. I know this one isn't Allegheny. It's one of the many small raspberries, but it's not swamp dewberry. It's not Rubus flagellus or whatever. It's one of those in-between Rubus. It's not a giant Rubus. It's not a tiny ground cover Rubus. It's a small Rubus, but not ground Rubus. It could be Rubus pubescens, but without leaves or flowers or fruit. It's kind of hard to tell. I think you can tell the difference if you look close enough at the spines and buds. And eventually with time, as I learn this species and see it in the winter, I'll be able to tell what it is. Just by the way. So I was saying, I'll be able to tell what it is just by the way it is. It has it's very, not peculiar, but distinct spinage and color. And no Rubus has the same spinage and color on their branches. If you can see that, it's a very, very light spinage. Very tiny. Little tiny prickles. And then the form. You know, the form could be different from other Rubuses. It's definitely different than the Allegheny or the Himalayan, which have very similar growth habits. And it's not the black raspberry. It's like, or the blue stem, because it doesn't have a blue stem and it's not in the sun or near a pasture. It's not dewberry because it's not on the ground, so it's one of the other ones. And there's 16. It's not wineberry, so we kind of narrowed it down. It's probably 5 to 10 other rubus species. That's how many kind of take on this kind of shrubby form. So I fucking read My Side of the Mountain again the other day while working. Audiobook. Beautiful. Makes me want to go and just fuck off into the forest for a while. But I got a business to tend to, so one way or the other, I'm going to try to find a way to fuck off. Just kind of do my own thing, you know? Because I love working, but I still want to work as much as I can. That's the thing. I love my work so much. So it's like two halves of the same whole. One wants to make gardens, one wants to explore them. And by explore them, I mean like the woods is my garden. Like, look at that. Look how beautiful. Oh my god. Oh, look at all those little pines leaning all the way down the way. Such a gorgeous forest. This beautiful, drooping witch hazel, the Hemlock virginiana. Look at that. That's gorgeous. Drooping nice. And then you got, that's how they break over time as snow, and as they get older, they snap. So that's why they stay shrubby. I bet you if we had no snow, these could get tree-sized. And I bet you there's areas of the state or of New England in general that have tree-sized witch hazels, because I've seen them down in North Carolina and they're beautiful. Berberis thunbergii, Japanese barberry, finding its way along the path. Invasive plant from Asia and will likely take over this wetland, but not for a while. It's just the beginning of its stage. They like richer, moist areas like this one. This one's likely a lowland bog or a swamp or a seep, or where a creek runs. Such beautiful forests. We have Fagus grandifolia, or the American beech. Not affected yet by the beech blight, so it's still marcescent, but we'll likely get it within the next few years. Nice little marcescent guy. I decided I took the wrong path, so I'm going to do some snowy off-trailing up this hill. The other trail is probably only 100 meters or so this way. Maybe 200 at most. Not even like a quarter mile. or barely a quarter mile. It's relatively close considering. The snowshoes are doing pretty good. I'm happy with them. We're in a laurel pine land. Where here's the calmia, or the laurel, and there's your pines. It's Pinus strobus. Now, not the most fun habitat to go through, especially when there's a lot of snow, because I'm going to get covered in snow, so I'm going to put this away. I think I found the other path. Yep, almost. This is one of them, in this young birch pine land. Very young. 30 or 40 years old. Probably not even 20. It's really young. Younger forest tends to be pretty not especially diverse, especially in this stage, because there's just so much competition. Yeah, it's steep. Oh, I wish I brought my sticks, but the sticks sucked. They kept shrinking on me, so I couldn't rely on them. I'll have to drill them together. I'm kicking butt though. Not bad. Maybe a 25-degree slope. Almost 30. Here's the trail. This is the peak of Bush Hill. Whew. Oh yeah. Gee willikers. It's a workout. Another cool look at the red oak bark, or Quercus rubra bark, is so these darker red strands, or I guess vertical crevices, that's all the new growth. The new growth tends to be more red. New growth bark tends to be more red for whatever reason. Or the growth that, you know, this is like maybe like a spreading point, like a tectonic plate of bark as the tree widens. And this is young oak bark right here. And that slowly gets wider as well. So this bumpy stuff, like, I don't know how it works, but it just continues expanding until these are thick blocks. When it's young, it quickly grows this kind of thin ring, but over time this will become like this chunky block. On larger oak trees, they're especially chunky, so the next tree I see that's old, I'll show you the big chunky blocks. So this is one that's younger. And I love the kind of, I'd almost call it like this kind of greenish sheen. You know what I mean? Red oak. And red oak because you got these red striations. Red maples have a much lighter gray color as compared to red oaks. Much lighter gray, just like, it's almost like a pinkish gray, whereas that's like a bluish gray. And this one's against just like another, just kind of a darker background, whereas that one's background is like dark red. Or extremely just blocky, whereas this one's kind of flaky looking. Be a pine mazeland getting knocked over by the snow. So this would usually be like a 10-foot tall cover, 10-foot tall cover of pure sapling pines underneath this pine forest. those deep ridges of the pines. White pines, Pinus strobus. Like, I could talk about these for years. I love Pinus strobus. Such a wonderful tree. Here he is. You see him? We're about at 7 inches of snow. Snowshoes are kicking ass. Doing good. Beautiful Bitula algensis with a yellow birch with its peely yellow bark. Peeling all the way up. This is an old fella. Beautiful. In this hemlock forest, right by this wetland. It's a cool spot. Avulata cortata, or the club pincushion. You can see his little club there. And it's not curly. The other common one is quite curly. It was focusing just a second ago. It's a bummer. Ah, there we are. Beautiful. Going on this witch hazel. Isn't that nice? Club pincushion. Or it could be the crisped pincushion. You know what, the curly one. I don't think it's curly. I think they're more straight. It's not curly enough to be the curly one. But maybe I'm wrong. It's definitely Ulata though. Pinus carolinea, or the hornbeam musclewood, growing here in the lowland, along with yellow birch and hemlocks. Absolutely beautiful. These are basically its winged seeds. And then it's a birch, so I'll have like little catkins and whatnot in the spring. Love it. Bit of a wetland here. A little sketchy here, and I go underneath me. Starting to slog through some wetlands, and I got like a layer of ice in the bottom of this. Just need to kind of kick it off. Making walking a little bit harder, that's for sure. walking over where my tracks were this morning, and probably at least 1 inch to 2 inches have fallen in them. An additional on top of the 3 or 4. Cool. So it snowed 3 or 4 inches since, probably 2 or 3, since I started hiking. Neat.